Good morning, everyone. You are listening to Chaiman. Welcome to this history online class. Today, we are going to see the part 2 of the chapter 12 Rise of Indian Nationalism. In the previous part, in the previous video, we have seen an introduction about why this situation has happened when Indian nationalism has been aroused all of a sudden. And we have also seen that this is due to the after effect of the revolt of the 1857, where we have seen so many drawbacks and the advantages. And one of the advantage of this revolt is that people aroused with the spirit of nationalism and patriotism. So today let us focus on to what are the causes of the rise of the nationalism. The main cause for the rise of the nationalism emerges from the socio-religious reforms. In the previous chapter, we have discussed about some of the reformers like Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. So all these reformers have actually brought so much of knowledge and information to the Indians to be aware of the foreign policies and the rules. They trained, they gave awareness, they taught the policy of Britishers that you should not blindly believe it and you should go. They also encouraged the Indians to go for the Western education, English education, learn and recognize the things what is happening in their surrounding. And we have seen that these socio-religious reforms, and they also practiced the bad influence of the many of the religious superstitious beliefs like sati, child marriage, widows are not allowed to remarriage. All these type of social evils, they fought against that. So these all awakened the people. These all opened their eyes towards the reality and also put a curtain on the blind beliefs that they used to follow from many years. So socio-religious reforms in the 19th century, it has influenced the Indians by the foreign scholars, and these Indian scholars, they have themselves influenced from the foreigners. So this brought a rediscovery which is carried out by the Indian socio-religious reformers. And when we talk about the reformers, there is a limitless names where we can also add on Swami Dayananda Saraswati, Mahadev, Govind Ranade, Swami Vivekananda, etc. etc. So all these reformers focused on the atheism. Atheism means the theme of one God. Though we call the gods in different names in the name of different religions, but all the gods teach us the basic one thing. Okay, love your neighbors, love your humanity. Okay, and all the gods have the same kind of belief. So these type of informations or the knowledge or awareness, this is spread by all these great socio-religious reformers. So this knowledge and information has actually brought many of the Indians to think over it and to analyze and reframe, the change their mindset or change their thinking. Though all these social setups and social changes and religious changes did not happen all of a sudden, it took much of years and time, but still people started getting awakened by themselves. Another cause that we come to see the rise of nationalism is the Vernacular Press Act. What is vernacular? We know India is a country where we see that multiple languages are spoken. So it's a multilingua. So that is why lingua means language. Okay, so multilingua. So people in India during those times under the British rulers, in different parts of the India, they used to publish the newspapers, journals, articles, and as a result of that, they used to write in their own regional languages. Okay, and this freedom was there because many of the reformers started emerging. They started writing in the newspapers, in the articles, in the journals, and started distributing to the people. And through these medias, they started sharing the information, sharing the more about the clarity about the British policies, etc. And if anything is there to criticize, they used to write in that, and it is all for the awareness of the people, not to annoy anyone. So when Britishers come to know that the Indian social reformers are taking this steps, they suddenly put a ban on the vernacular press. Means the writers should not publish anything that can be offended or that can make the Britishers angry or against the Britishers. Okay, so this act was being introduced. So vernacular, it is actually the spread of the modern ideas and the awareness. This is actually used to criticize the British policies, exposes their evils of the foreign rule. And vernacular press also focused on the ideas of democracy and responsible government that should be popularized. It brought more national spirit among the people. It also, not only this vernacular press, even the literature in whatever language it was written, people used to, through their stories, to their poems, they used to make people, the educated Indians, the upcoming educated Indians, aware about this. And national literature through the form of novel, essays, patriotic poems, then the famous songs like Vande Mataram by Bankim Chandra Chatterjee and many more. Okay, Tagore and Munshi Premchandji, all these people have given a great contribution in awakening the people through their literary works. Next, we will see the economic exploitation. This is another cause where the rise of nationalism actually happened. It is because of the economic exploitation. And we have already seen that British used to take and carry a lot of raw materials that are very naturally available in India to England and other foreign countries in the name of the trade. So British economic policies in India made it an agricultural colony. All those abundantly available agriculture products were being taken away by the Britishers. India, they made it as a market for their import and the export. So there is a supplier of the raw materials and the market for the British manufactured goods. India's traditional industrial systems, means the small scale industries, the traditional industries like carpentry, weaving, then pottery, all these type of traditional small scale industries were destroyed by the Britishers and the natural resources were exploited by them. This in resulted in the drain of wealth, means drain of wealth. This theory was actually introduced by Dadabhai Naoroji. And when we talk about the drain of wealth, India was abundantly blessed with natural resources, and all these resources which are abundantly available in India, this was being taken away by the Britishers, and this we call it as a drain of wealth. Now let us see what are the after effects of this drain of wealth, how Indians started getting affected. One is the impoverishment of the masses. When good quality of the food products are being exported to England and other countries, the people living in India started facing the malnourishment. They were not getting the good quality of the crops or the products, etc., because all the edible and good quality are taken away by the Britishers and they were exporting it. So this resulted in the poor nourishment of the Indian people, their children, etc. So and second is that industrial decay. It led to the industrial decay. All the small scale industries start where almost come to the situation where they have to close it, and factories are being introduced, import and exporting system has been introduced. As a result of that, the Indian local industries or the small factories also started getting affected, which resulted in unemployment, which resulted in lack of wages, very less work, and there were no buyers for their products. Okay, mostly the foreign made products are being encouraged in the Indian markets to be sold. So as a result of that, the urban and the rural products remained there as it is, with no market or no buyers. So this also resulted in the economical growth of the country during that time. The next, the most important one, in course of time, this drain of wealth had brought great poverty and frequent famines. Okay, when the Indian farmers, they were forced to cultivate the agricultural crops. More than that, they were forced to cultivate the cash crops like indigo, coffee, etc. So these type of cash crops brought money for the Britishers, but it led to the lack of proper availability of the pulses, cereals that we use for our daily requirements. So all these became a great reason for the economical decline or less economical growth in our country, which affected the common people living in India. Another reason that come for the rise of Indian nationalism is the racial arrogance and social racial discrimination. Now, all Indians are considered inferior and uncivilized races. Inferior means they are not up to their level, okay, and uncivilized means they are not educated, they are not well mannered, etc. So basically, the Indian way of living, the Indian people, their language, culture, even the color, okay, all this affected the Britishers. The Western ideas of equality and personal freedom taught in English schools and colleges in India. So, even the English schools were started, which we have seen in the previous chapter. We have seen many English schools have started, and Indian students were promoted, were allowed to go and learn in the English school. But there also a lot of racial discrimination continued. The Western schools, mainly the teachers, they started following the Western way of living and teaching the Indian students in that way, where the common Indian students were not able to cope up with that, and this brought a kind of racial discrimination. Many of the times, even the students were not allowed to sit with the British officer students, or the according based on the caste and creed. Many of them were, asked to stay out of the class. So these type of racial discriminations were practiced not only in the classroom. This was also seen when the railway system was introduced. Then also they classified into first, second and third class, and in first class no British, except Britishers, no Indians were allowed to sit. And if you might have heard the famous story about the Gandhiji, when he was one traveling in the train, he was being not allowed to sit in the first class, and he was asked, all his luggage and everything is thrown out into the platform, and he was asked to sit in the third class. So this kind of racial discrimination started existing, or started happening during this time. And the Queen's Proclamation of 1858 also brought so much of royalty towards the Britishers and control over the Indians. So this discriminatory policies that has been introduced by the Britishers actually brought a lot of changes. So Indians were debarred from using parks, clubs, hospitals, libraries, railway coaches. They were exclusively reserved for the British people. All important administrative positions were reserved for the Britishers. Even in the administrative position, in the offices where higher posts are being reserved for the British officers, whereas the Indians, even though they are qualified, even though they are well educated enough and experienced, they were not being promoted to the higher post in the administrative offices. Surendranath Banerjee was dismissed from giving the Indian civil service examination. In those times, the Indians had to the very many in many intelligent Indian used to appear in the Indian civil service examination, which was a very tough examination conducted by the British itself. So once you pass in the Indian civil service examination, you will be appointed in the higher post in the administrative. So this civil service examination, even though you are educated, you are qualified, then also we have seen Surendranath Banerjee was dismissed, and he did not got that position of being in the administration. This Indian nominated Indians in legislative councils were not given in any power. Even due to some reasons, if some of them were nominated, they were not even given the desired positions which they actually should get. Okay, so many of them were remained only as a puppet in the hands of the Britishers, or many of them remained as a for the namesake. So these we can see are the another cause for the economic declination. Then comes the repressive policies of Lord Lytton. Lord Lytton has brought the repressive policies, which we call as a Vernacular Press Act. We have already seen what is Vernacular Press Act. So he brought a ban or a complete stop on the vernacular press. Now, according to this policy, no Indians are supposed to have the freedom to write anything against the British, or neither they criticize. So this freedom of writing, freedom of speech has been completely taken away by Indians, by Lord Lytton, by introducing this policy named as a Vernacular Press Act. And people, as a result of this, deprived of the basic freedom of writing and expressing their thoughts and the imaginations. Next, he also introduced the Arms Act. During that time, the rich Indian families, or the people belonging to the higher positions of or the descendants of the kings or the queens, they used to carry the arms. So they have brought a curtail on this arm, that usage of the arm. So Indians could not own and carry any weapons like sword or dagger, or even pistols were very rarely available, but still rifle, etc., with a license, without a license from the government. So they made it compulsory that if any Indian family or any Indian is carrying any arm or having it in their custody, they have to get it licensed. Without that, they cannot carry. So this is called the Arms Act. So this was also been introduced by the Lord Lytton, and the act did not apply to, and this act was applicable only for the Indians, and this act was not at all applicable to the Britishers. That means the Britishers had all the freedom to use the arms, they used the press, but whereas the Indians were not having any freedom to use this. Then coming to the third point is a reduction in the age of the ICSE examinations. You know, ICS examination, Indian Civil Service examination, earlier the age was kept as 21 years, which is considered as an eligible age for any Indian to apply for the civil service examination. But Britishers reduced this age into 19 years deliberately because they don't want any learned Indian to be appointed in the administration. So that is why, in order to make it the exam more tough, they deliberately reduced this age into 19 years, which actually affected many of the learned, educated Indians who were aspiring to get into the Indian administration to bring some changes in the Indian policies introduced by the Britishers. They lost this platform, they lost this chance to get into the administration. And these examinations conducted candidates who were joining for these civil services, they were reduced with this law. Means the number of the students appearing for this particular examination, they were reduced, because normally in the 19 years no one could complete the graduation, and the level of the examination, the question set were of the graduation level, which was considered to be very difficult for a 19-year-old Indian educated person to appear, and this resulted in the very less number of the aspirants to participate in the competition of the Indian Civil Service examination. Then came the Ilbert Bill controversy. Now, Lord Lytton was succeeded by Lord Ripon, and Lord Ripon approved the Ilbert Bill. Now, according to the Ilbert Bill, there were certain conditions that Indians, they allowed the Indian judges to try Europeans accused of crimes. Means they allowed the Indian judges to try Europeans accused of the crimes, and this resulted in the violent revolt, that is White Mutiny. It is also called as a White Mutiny by the Europeans and also the Anglo-Indians. The Indian judges the Indian culprits were being accused by the Europeans, and whatever decision they used to take. And in this bench, there is no Indian representative. The European representatives will be taking the decision for the Indian culprit. So this actually created a kind of if now it's completely in their hands whether they have to free the person or what type of punishment they have to give, how many years they have to keep the person imprisoned or to be hanged to death. So there is no Indian voice there is no Indian representative according to this Ilbert Bill. This also caused Indian nationalists to push for an organized national bodies. That means this made the Indian nationalists that we should have our own judicial bench. We should have because we are taking decisions for our people, so there should be an Indian voice. So this also aroused the Indian nationalists to fight against the Britishers. Then came Surendranath Banerjee. He held the Indian National Conference in 1883. So Surendranath Banerjee introduced this concept of the Indian National Congress under the leadership and support of the many other nationalists during that time. So this is how the Indian National Congress was formed in 1883. And in Indian National Congress, they had some aims. That is, it established in 1885 officially, and it was initiated by the Ellen Octavio Hume, that is we call it as A.O. Hume, who was also a retired British official of the civil service, and he supported many of the Indian nationalists and helped them in the formation of this Indian National Congress. The first session of the Indian National Congress was held in Bombay in December 1885, and this was presided by the W.C. Banerjee. So this Indian National Congress became a new political platform. Today we have so many political parties, so this was considered as the first political party with the Indians irrespective of age, irrespective of the religion, all joined together to fight against their one common enemy, that is British. Now let us see what are the aims of this Indian National Congress. First one is to promote friendly relationships among the nationalist workers in different parts of India. So it's like to gather all the nationalist workers from all the corners of the India and make a good relationship or good tie up with the people. Second one is to develop and strengthen the feelings of the national unity throughout the country. The national unity, together united we stand, divide we fall. So they used to spread these kind of slogans and to make the people together stand together to fight against the British. And why they are more emphasizing on this? Because the revolt of 1857 showed an example that if there was no proper planning for that revolt, but still the Indians were able to show the courage that they can fight against the Britishers. So that is why it has become very necessary that to keep all the Indians united under one roof to fight against their common enemy. The next one is to formulate popular demands and present them before the government. The demands, that the needs and the demands and the rights could be kept in front of the British government, British Indian government, by the Indian nationalists, so that the life of the people and the rights of the people can be achieved. Another aim is to train and organize public opinion in the country. So it's like people should know about their country, people should know what's happening in their country, what are the democratic policies, how we have the administration should be for the people, by the people, and it should be of the people, which is the watchword of the democracy. So all these ideas people should know about their country. So that is why the Indian National Congress mainly aimed in all these things. So with this we'll conclude this class, and I hope that you have understood. I request all of you to go through the textbook and once again revise your lessons. Thank you for listening.